Now, the party conference season is over and the election battle begins. The East Midlands will play a vital role in deciding who will get into 10 Downing Street next May. Party members from our patch have been meeting up with their leaders at conferences around the country to plan their campaigns. And our political editor, John Hess, lucky chap, has been to all of them. Here's what the big political guns told him about their thoughts on the East Midlands.
Derbyshire is cut, and I accept all local authorities are having to make difficult decisions, but Derbyshire is actually being cut by less than the national average. People in Derbyshire, the funding they get is greater than, for instance, people in my constituency, and yet in my constituency, because we've managed to get more volunteers into our library service, there aren't cuts going ahead. So I think they've got some questions to answer about why they're cutting frontline services rather than doing what they could be doing, which is how to combine back office functions and even chief executives and finance directors with neighbouring authorities, which many other authorities are doing.
I think fracking has a role, but I think it needs to be done in a careful and considered and properly regulated fashion. I don't think we should sort of turn our nose up at a whole new industry or technology. If we'd done that in the past, we've never had railways or mobile phone networks. So, new infrastructure happens from time to time, but it needs to be done carefully.
I think the most important thing is to be led by people and to make sure we reverse all of the centralisation we've seen. Too much power hoarded in Westminster, not enough power devolved to England. That's what we're going to do.
But what sort of economic powers could be available to a city region like Nottingham, for example?
I think one thing that's really important is powers over transport spending, for example, because all of that spending at the moment is spent in Westminster. It should be devolved to regions and sub-regions. Transport, economic development, skills, control over skills budgets. All of those things are the kinds of things that can make a real difference to people in the East Midlands.
So, John, you've obviously met them all. Who's looking the most confident?
Well, Mari, one of the best descriptions of the current state of our politics came from a Liberal Democrat, former Foreign Minister Jeremy Browne. He said his party was a little bit like the supermarket chain Morrison's, struggling to boost share. Well, let's extend that analogy, shall we? So let's say the Conservatives are a little bit like Tesco, Labour, well, the Co-op, of course, and then it comes across. Then we get kind of Lidl and Aldi, very much kind of the UKIP new kids on the block, with a shop window that obviously is making an offer to the electorate that's proving to be slightly more popular. Little wonder that Nigel Farage is enjoying his supermarket sweep this weekend.
We won the European elections in May of this year, and everybody said, well, that's fine, well done, Nigel, but you'll never win a seat under first past the post. We've just won a seat under first past the post, and if voters think, not only do we actually agree with UKIP, but that vote could lead to us winning seats in Parliament, I think that change of perception is huge for us.
I guess the big question now, John, is can UKIP maintain that momentum until next May?
Well, let's look at some figures for the East Midlands. You'll remember that UKIP topped the poll in the East Midlands in the Euro elections with 33% of the popular vote here. That was a good 7 points ahead of Labour and the Conservatives. Yet despite all the razzmatazz, the big momentum, the publicity, the excitement, when it came to the Newark parliamentary by-election, UKIP couldn't quite make it, even though they had a swing of about 22%. And I think perhaps it could be in the more marginal East Midland constituencies next May, where that UKIP vote could result in some increasingly difficult results to predict.
OK, well, let's find out what our guests in the studio make of this. Edward, you can't ignore the UKIP threat to you, especially after that Clacton result.
On the contrary, no. I mean, the result there was great for UKIP, and they got a 12,000 majority. Yes, built on the strength of a Conservative Member of Parliament who defected and used his Conservative base to do that. Look up into the northwest in Middleton and Hayward. The UKIP came within 600 votes of the Labour Party in a safe Labour seat. I think the interesting thing
But if they do have successes here, that could cost you and your party dear here in the East Midlands. Never mind Clacton or anywhere else.
May well do, but I think the interesting thing about UKIP and also the Liberals actually is that they're quite good at piling up votes where they are strong, but they're not good, or I doubt they will be good at pushing that right across the national scene. At best, I think UKIP could get 3, 4, 5 seats at a national election. But interestingly, isn't it, that at Clacton, the Liberal Democrats got 600, or was it 400 votes, which is pathetic. And this is a party which aspires to be a party of government.
What's the danger to you then? And the Labour Party, Glenis?
Well, I obviously think we have to take UKIP seriously, and what the voters are saying to us. We have to listen to the message they're giving us. And the problem is, at the moment, most people feel that they're not getting anything out of this recovery. Everybody's telling us there's a recovery, and they're £1,800 worse off under Cameron. Their bills are going up. You know, there's lots of things happening to them, and they see they're being squeezed, and they don't think it's fair, and so they're frustrated, I think.
Oh, let's talk about some of the areas, the marginals, if you like. Look at Broxtowe, for example. Is the Miliband factor there likely to blunt Nick Palmer's chances for your party?
Well, interestingly enough, we're doing very well in those marginal seats. You could see from the local elections, we did very well in places like Amber Valley and Lincoln, where we need to win. Those seats we need to win over. We're much further ahead in the polls in those seats that we need to win.
Okay.
So, you know, we have to talk to as many people as we can and get our message across.
So it sounds like you both accept that UKIP is a threat. Matthew Goodwin, from an expert on UKIP from the University of Nottingham, actually told us that UKIP are likely to pick up 3 to 6 seats in the election.
Across the United Kingdom?
Yes, across the United Kingdom.
Yes, I mean, I think what we have to bear in mind is as what I said a moment ago, that they may pick up 1 or 2 seats in areas where they are strong. I don't think you're going to see them perform uniformly across the country. But the other thing I think to factor in, and since we have a United Kingdom general election coming up, is that the SNP in Scotland, I think, is going to take votes off the Labour Party. The left of centre vote in Scotland is going to go to the SNP. So I think where the Labour Party has in the past relied on a lot of Labour, about 40 Labour MPs in Scotland from the central belt, I think those won't be there for
Isn't
them.
there a danger of complacency, though, Edward? It sounds like,
I think you've got enough to
No,
worry about.
I asked you a question.
I
You gave me an
think
answer,
you've
but
got enough to
I'm
worry
asking
about
now,
yourself.
is there a danger of being complacent?
Well, if I were a Labour member of Parliament, I would not be in the least bit complacent. I think I may have a lot fewer colleagues.
No, we're not at all complacent. We have to get our message across that we have answers to some of the problems people have. You don't have any answers, and neither do UKIP. You need to worry about your seats in the East Midlands much more. You've been a little bit complacent
what happened,
about
though,
UKIP,
up north,
I think.
then, in that by-election in Middleton
Well,
Hayward?
absolutely, but you know, it is true that at by-elections people do vote differently because they're not voting for government at that point in time. We should not be complacent, but I think we have the answers. We're talking about a freeze on energy prices, raising the minimum wage, getting our young people back to it. We've got a good message
so why
to
do you only have
sell.
a majority of 600 in a safe Labour seat?
Why did you lose Clacton? I mean, come on. Let's be serious about this. If you're going to have a discussion, let's be serious.
I am being serious. I mean, if Labour aspires to be the single party of government, it should be winning seats from a position of opposition in its safe Labour heartlands by thousands, not by 600.
You've only been in government one term, and you're in danger of losing the election already after
Let me
just one term.
briefly bring John back in here. Are they putting a brave face on all of this, John?
Well, are the Liberal Democrats worried about UKIP in the East Midlands? Well, in those target seats that they have, and Glenis and Edward may giggle at this, but in Chesterfield and Derby North and Ashfield, they want UKIP to do well because they think they'll take votes off the Labour Party, votes off the Tories, and then the Liberal Democrats can charge through the middle and take the seats. Now, we'll see whether that happens next May, shall we?
Well, we certainly will. It'll be interesting, won't it?
It'll be interesting.
It'll be very interesting. OK, well, John, thanks very much indeed.